Dave's gonna be here again.
All right, well, let's start the workshop for purposes of budget discussion. Sue.
Yes, I have a revised worksheet for you, and there is a formula error on page 8. It's under the street sign, so I will fix that. It's about $12,000, so my numbers are probably off about $12,000. Last time we met, we went through and we incorporated all the changes. We cut about $103,000 out of what we had in there. So that decreased what the preliminary tax rate was to fully fund the operating expenses. So it's instead of the 28 it was, it's 16.79 right now, or it's 1.038 over the 2025 tax rate. The levy is an increase of about $410,000. And so the factors related to that are still the same. So if you want to turn to page 2, so we can be as efficient as possible. What I started with is on the outstanding issues, all the questions that you had that you wanted us to look into and look up. So I did them by line item number and I did them in order. So under the city administrator budget, you wanted to know about professional services. You asked me to check to see what's charged this account. So the previous interim city administrator was charged there and I had already removed $70,000. So what's left there is more IT, that's our IT, access and catalyst. Previous to 2025, the amount you budgeted there had always been $25,000. And I have $30,000 in 2026 budget.
What is access and catalyst, by the way?
Steve, do you know what those are?
No.
Is catalyst the drug testing at all or anything?
It was. I'll try and see if I can.
Okay. So anything I haven't read is what is currently in there. So I highlighted that in red, so it'd be easy if you wanted to change any of these numbers. Next is legal fees. While he's looking that up, we contacted Peter and he went to get an idea of what a reasonable amount was. So he went through all of his bills. He said that 60 to 65 would be the number for 26 unless you're going to have significant additional work regarding City Hall, or if you have some other matters that come up. He said then he would estimate 70 to 75,000. We currently have $60,000 in that budget. Under streets and highways, street signs, you asked me to check with Leroy about the $12,000 that's budgeted here. That's also where the formula error is right there. It's for the city entrance signs that need to be installed. And that is an old budgeted number. The cost now is likely to be between $18,000 and $20,000. So what we have in the budget is $12,000. Under paved streets.
What, yeah,
Yep.
there isn't anything in there, I don't believe, for repair of signs either. The maintenance of signs.
For just regular
I
maintenance stuff?
think you had added some last time, didn't you?
No, I think we were questioning whether or not the $12,000 was for the entrance signs or for replacing some of our existing signs. I did check, we did our street sign replacement in 2 phases. The first phase was in 2014 and the second phase was in 2015. We used high intensity prismatic sheeting. That sheeting has a 10-year warranty. So we're right up against the warranty. A lot of times the sheeting will last a year or 2 after the warranty. But we should think about starting to replace our street signs.
So we need to find a capital improvement plan for street signs in the future soon. Okay.
Are they failing us? Are they not readable anymore?
Well, there is a federal law that requires us to maintain minimum retro reflectivity. So when a car's headlights hits the sign at night, it reflects back a minimum amount of time. There are ways to measure that. The city of Credit River has chosen the expected sign life method because the other ways of measuring that are expensive or very time consuming.
You'd have to go around at night, Shannon.
So one method is, somebody that's over 60 years old, driving at night, and they're measuring or determining whether or not they can see the signs.
I'll volunteer for that.
Just think of all the time it would take to write down, we have,
Every single one.
yeah, we have a lot of signs.
If you can see it.
Is that with or without
And
gloves?
the other method is there's actually a tool that you can use to shoot it. The tool is like 20,000 or 25,000.
Yeah.
And that takes a bunch of time too to measure, get a reading and set, so.
And the signs that are facing the south tend to go out a little sooner than other ones.
They have UV damage.
Yeah,
Okay.
or to the east, they should say.
So can we even install those entrance signs? Cause I thought there once upon a time we couldn't even do that.
Well, we had them ordered.
We never went through the process of trying to get a permit from the county.
Right. Because they,
The county requires a specific sign in a specific spot.
and
Never
certain,
went to the
certain size, and then
Permit.
a year later, they changed their size. So. So that's that. Be nice to get them up.
Ready?
Yeah.
To move on? Okay. Under paved streets, street sweeping. You asked to check on the amount that was spent in 2025. We found the bill was paid in July. That's why it didn't show up in those June year to dates. It was $2,520. And then when I looked at 2023 and 2024, we spent like just under $5,000. So I put 4,800 in the budget that you have now.
Okay.
And the reason it was more of that time, we went around and cleaned up after some of our seal coating.
Right, but I don't know,
Yeah.
should this be
Yeah.
less than 4,800 then?
No,
Okay. But this year it was 2520.
Okay.
Okay, then under storm damage or storm drainage, under professional services, that actual amount was moved to engineering. It was put there by mistake. It was one line below where it should have been. I can't find that that account has been charged since 2023. So I'm not sure if something had just been charged the wrong account and then reclassed later. So I just reduced that budget to zero. There was 30,000, or 10,000 in there, I think. Under parks, under the seal coat, that was numbers that I had gotten from Shane, but I think he put it, after I talked to him, it was that same number we talked about seal coating, and we put that in we upped it to 50,000 in the streets budget. So that was a duplicate. So I reduced that to zero. So that 30,000 is gone and it's a zero. It was the same description. It just was put in the wrong spot when it was first entered. And then on the transfers, that's just because the road and bridge was combined to the general fund, and we had the 1,335,794 up in the revenue. So that's why it's down in the expenditures, is because the two funds were combined together. I didn't do what we do on financial statements and take out interfund transfers, because that's just a lot of paperwork to move around that we do at audit time, but we don't do that when we're working on individual funds. And so you have the total road and bridge fund and the total general fund added together in all categories. That's all the difference there was there. And then I did remove the capital equipment from 2026 to 2027 in the CIP as directed. So then we're left with all the outstanding items that still need to be discussed from the last work session. So unless you have anything you want changed to these numbers here, you'd have to let me know. All the ones I just told you. What we have left then is the mini water study. That was brought up that there was $5,000 to possibly $20,000 to do in 2026. This would not be in the budget. None of these things in this list have input into the budget at all. They were things that you brought up to discuss. And so that's why I wrote this, so that you could spend your time discussing these. The fire truck, we haven't been able to get a hold of the finance director yet. She hasn't got back to us, but we know it's around $400,000. We don't know the exact amount. The long-term land fund purchase expenses, any expenses on City Hall other than replacing the doors and the maintenance stuff. The funding for ditch 4. And if there's any study or anything we need to have done for, because we have the MS4 permit. It was brought up that maybe we wanna, budget $10,000 in 26 or more. We're gonna have to add dollars for that new paid leave law that was enacted. And it's effective on January 1 of 2026. We did leave the contingency in there right now, and so we think that that can cover that because we think that might only cost $3,000, maybe $4,000. We're not sure. In the park fund, we moved the basketball court repairs from 29 to 2026, but Shane was gonna get updated pricing on the hoops for a more accurate amount, but that money comes from the park fund, so it's not something we'd have to put in the levy. So it's not gonna affect our levy
Okay.
talk right now. And then, this other one is for a 2027 Longview Lane reclaim and repave CIP. Are the costs even still current? That's more for long-term planning. It's not gonna affect your levy. So what I did then was I gave you a recap. So before you start discussing this, you have an idea where you're sitting right now. So the average market value change on residential property for the city was 8.1%. So when Scott County gave me the modular to estimate it, if I take what our levy is right now and I put it into that system, the increase, like on the first one, there's only 49 properties, but if you go to the one that has 1,333, okay, that property there would increase by $197.19. Now, I just want to tell you, I went also and figured out if we didn't change the levy at all and we left it flat, like as the same amount as last year, their taxes would still go up $107.99 because that's what their market value changed it to. The city levy is only adding $89.21. So that second column from the right, that's what their taxes are gonna go up because of the market value in their house. The far right is what it's going to do because of your levy, where it's sitting at right now. And then what I did on the last page is I gave you a history of the chart of what your tax levy was. So I went from 22 forward because 21, I think you would have adopted that probably as a township. And so I went from 22 to now and showed you what your levy is and the increase your levy was. I did the net capacity and what the increase of your net capacity was. And I also listed what your tax rates are or have been. And that's just using what I have in there now. And just that what's in here now doesn't include any of those things on that list or anything else that you want to talk about. And I know in October, November, what I want to do is put together a long range plan so that you can figure out how to even things out and what you're expecting to spend. But you will not be able to raise your tax levy after you set it at the next meeting. So once we set it, we're there, but we still have time in October and November to still fine tune and do things to the budget, but you can't increase your tax levy. So but when I work on those, I will put fund balances and I'll go digging in and looking at what things you've moved around, what you've assigned to what you've put away for certain things, and then come up and I'll have a long range plan.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Council, questions, comments?
The ditch for or stormwater plan that was thinking of coming up with. If we do any kind of maintenance on any of this stuff next year, I think we should increase it to 20,000.
So Leroy, I think this might have come up after you left.
Okay.
The point of this was regardless of ditch 4.
Yep.
Or anything, we have stormwater facilities today.
Mhm.
We don't have a capital plan to go forward to cover.
Right.
And understand what the maintenance and repairs are upcoming. So this was an ask of. What would it cost for Shane to do a capital plan for our stormwater
Oh, okay.
facilities?
Gotcha.
Regardless of ditch 4 or not, it's just,
Yep.
it needs,
It's the cost
Right now, we
of
don't-
studying and
we don't
studying. it out.
know, study,
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
So right now, we can't budget on a consistent basis for
Mhm.
stormwater improvements. They just come up and pop up on us.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
don't know, we don't have a plan for taking care of.
Yeah, my thought,
Pond and Country Court.
my thoughts on putting it in were basically just to, let's figure out, we need to basically do an inventory, a study. Figure out what needs to be done. And then get it into some sort of a capital plan. And this money wasn't necessarily for doing any of the work. It's just
Mhm.
to come up with a capital improvement plan or capital maintenance plan for it. For both the ditch and our other stormwater stuff.
Okay.
And Shane, you still think that 10,000 is enough, something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So are you wanting me to put 10,000 into the budget?
I think that'd be a good idea. We've got to understand what our needs are.
okay.
What line have you?
It'll be under stormwater,
Stormwater.
yeah. In the stormwater department. Or storm drainage, maybe it's called.
Yeah, I know.
That'll be in fees for professional services.
Okay,
Well, the fire truck, are we gonna maybe do like 100 grand a year? Towards that, and build up to pay that down?
well, my suggestion was that we get something in it. Because we know that we're gonna have an expense a couple of years down the road.
Yep.
So we might as well start setting aside money for it or paying for it, either way. That way it's not just a $400,000 whack.
Yeah.
3 years from now.
So are you looking at that as coming out of reserves, or are you looking at me adding 100,000 to the capital levy?
Do it over. Over a few years, we should add it to the capital.
The capital levy?
Oh,
I'm not in agreement with that. I don't think we should add anything right now.
you gotta pay for it.
I think my thought was we do a little bit each year to get this built up to pay for the thing.
I mean, my thoughts are, we don't wanna be going up and down on expenses.
Yeah,
We should just, and we know we have a commitment for this already. The truck's been ordered. Prior Lake Fire Department's told us what it's gonna cost and what our share is roughly what our share is gonna be. We don't know exactly.
329,
Okay. So if we were to do,
329, 798.
and that's 3 years out, right?
Yeah, should be delivered in 2027.
Okay, 2 years out, we'd have to pay for it. So we should be thinking about, do we wanna pay 329 in 2 years, or do we,
So actually,
or 3?
the billing would start estimated 2027 delivery, but debt payment 2028.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
Not a
3
full
years.
amount, right, Chris? You don't pay the full amount of our share.
Yeah, so it'd be
First
added, it would be added to the rates as a capital, just like all the other ones,
Right, so
right?
it'd be about 150,000 increase first year, not 400.
Yeah. Right, it's not a one-time thing, but I think the discussion was the last time, the potential advantages of. Working on it earlier, paying up front would be, is if our market value changes and our rates change. Comparatively over between now and when the debt starts, right? So as our market value continues to increase from. Additional development and valuation of the homes, because that's
That's how they charge.
that's how the contract is figured out. You have the potential to raise your share, especially as Spring Lake's share goes down. So that would be the only advantage that I could see of wanting to do this forward and I can't remember if we had that. Cause I think we know what that number looked like. That just come from. Steve, did you have that?
I just had the total of the fire truck as a whole.
Okay, so you didn't have the breakdown of the year over year for the next. When you did the fire meeting, did they give that out?
Yeah.
Not,
The forecast?
The forecast?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember. what-
Yeah, it just had the number of the entire fire truck, it's like 1 point.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the annual
Yeah.
forecast.
I have it pulled up here on it. What would you like to know?
I'm just curious what the rate changes in 28 from 27 due to the, what's the payment piece for a fire truck on an annual basis?
So our 2027 projection is 689,000 or 690, I'm rounding, 690,000 and 28 is 816.
So it does take a significant jump. How much of that
And
is?
then it goes to 871.
Cause I know there's other expenses.
Right,
Right, so do they have that line item just for that piece?
and annual amortization for equipment, it's a negative 70,000 in 2027, but then a positive 121.
Because they're getting
So it's
traded.
about, so it's about 120 a year then. Then does, how far out does that go?
And then it's only 20,000 increase that following year, huh?
How,
This only goes out to 2030.
okay, so that, what's 29,
Okay,
that same line item?
so
just read
negative
out
7,
29 to
yep.
30 then.
Negative 70 in 27, then 122 in 28, 20,000 in 29, and 62,000.
That's the increases?
That's the equipment line item. I'm sorry, are you looking for the
I'm just wondering what the, what
Our
the
share is?
addition- yeah, what the
Okay.
additional piece to that.
689 and 27, 816, 28, 871, 29, and 1027. 30.
And there's a tanker truck in 2030, I think, on the
Right.
docket too.
So I guess it's just a matter of does it make sense? To use potentially reserve as a capital, and we move it, transfer it to capital and then pay for that. Early or when it happens, or does it make sense just to take the rate as it goes? That I think would be the only. Ask, or only discussion that piece of whether that makes sense or not.
As a taxpayer, if I wasn't sitting back here as a taxpayer, I wouldn't want the city to tax me any sooner than I have to be taxed. And I don't mind the ups and downs as long as it's explained to me why it's going up and down. As long as you explain it, people will understand. I'd rather hold on to my cash and make money with my cash than giving it to the city and then they hold on to it. It's like, I'd rather pay when I have to pay as a taxpayer.
I think if I was on a tight budget, I would want to have it consistent. As a taxpayer.
I think we have another 250,000 to cut. I don't want to increase our tax levies by 14%, 15%, whatever the new number is, 15%. I think it's too high of an increase. When inflation is 3 to 5% and we're gonna ask for 15%. If the tax rate goes down, and the tax rate is based on, that's how you spread out the number, but. That's too high of an increase. So I think we should live within our means. Say 5% for this preliminary round, and increase our levies by 5%. And we identify what categories we want to cut things out. If we want to cut out some of the projects, we cut out some of the projects. That's what we have. Or use some of the reserves that we built up over the years, because we've built up quite a bit of reserve in the general fund.
Where are you suggesting we cut?
Well, I can only use the old numbers from the other night. But administrator, 41,320. What I did is I took 3% from 2025 budget, so I cut 14 grand from 41,320. I don't know where that is. I don't know how we get there. Maybe we don't. Planning and zoning, 41,910.
Lord out. Number is what?
41,910, planning and zoning. Right now it's going up 52,000. This is last week's numbers. It's going up 52,000. I say cut 40 of it. Grow at 3%. City Hall, 41,940. 23 grand. Public Works. 43,000. 14 grand. Highway, streets and roads. 43,100. 55 grand. Paved streets. 132. That's paved streets is 43,121. That one we would have to kind of like look at the streets that we were going to do. I think a lot of that is micro surfacing. We pushed some of that street stuff out a year.
Thought we already pushed that out.
Unpaved streets, 43,122, 12,000. Storm drainage, 43,150. 53,000. Parks, 45,200. $32,000. And contingency, take out the 50 grand.
Okay.
But that was last numbers and you've already cut 100. So
103, yeah.
so if I did the math, I'd do it again and it'd be something less than the numbers I just mentioned because I was using old numbers. But my methodology was just saying some of these look like they're growing much faster than the rate of inflation, so I just calculate what would the rate of inflation be on 2025 and 25 numbers to get to 2026 and then just subtract what was in 2026. That was my methodology to do it.
Okay, what are you cutting on those, each of these then?
Which line items?
Yeah, each line item, what are you actually cutting?
Well, Jay, I can do that for you and I'll send it to you. I'm not ready to do that yet. And I didn't want to overstep my bounds, but those are the categories that looked like they grew too much, in my opinion.
Okay,
The 50 grand is easy. The contingency, zero that out. There's not much to say about that. The 132 for the paved streets. We have to, I don't know how we do that. We just assume that we do less micro surfacing this year, next year, and push out some of those streets to the following year. But if you want, I can go dig deeper, even deeper into these. I just looked at the totals, not the categories within the totals. I did have a question too. Steve, did you confirm that? Did you guys make adjustments to the benefits calcs?
Yep.
So they're, okay, those are fixed. Yep. And like I said, the numbers I just gave you were last week's numbers. If we lowered the 500 down to 400, that was a 20% reduction. So my numbers would theoretically be 20% lower too.
You just lowered 3%. Well,
For the categories that looked like they were growing too much from 2025, I just said, okay, those categories, let's just grow at 3%. And you calculate what it is, and then you subtract out what was in the 2026 plan. It's just a 3% growth rate from the 2025 budget. And maybe we use 5% since this is a preliminary budget, but I don't want to show a 15% increase because we're all going to get this in November or whenever these come out, September. Over. But
November.
yeah, the biggest one last year was 13%. That was New Prague, but most of these were in the single digits, around 5 to 6%. there's some outliers, Bell Plain. Bell Plain and New Prague are outliers, but
And it doesn't matter that we have a lower tax rate than most of them.
I'm only looking at the levy. Yeah, I'm just looking at the levy. How much dollars are we gonna ask people to pay?
Tax rate doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I do, so,
They don't show the tax rate either on these sheets. I mean, this is what people see.
right. I do think we wanna have some kind of. Level tax, so we're not up and down, because I do think as you get tighter on your budget, that up gets even harder, right? So I see that, and I don't. Disagree that we should be putting funds in for things that we can see in the future, but I also disagree that having something. It's basically the blank check. And we're trying to say what we need versus what do we wanna grow, what's the dollar amount, or what's the percentage that we should be looking at? I think if we have an end target, then we can start to look at which projects can or can't happen.
So what's your thoughts on a levy increase dollars? What do you think the residents would be okay with?
Well. I think looking back here. On page 4. If I see a net increase of $312. I don't care how much income you have, that's noticeable. Right, it's a pretty decent, I mean, even when you get down to the 1 to 5%. Just due to the market change. It doesn't, I could test in my valuation, because I know that's what my tax rate's gonna hit, right? And so that's gonna be where the final dollars come out. Do I want to spend an extra $10 a month? Am I gonna notice that at 1 to 5%? Probably not, right? But am I gonna notice $30 a month if I'm in that area? I would say yes. And do we want, and put that on top of every other 15+% from Scott County or the state? That becomes noticeable really fast. I don't have an answer for your question though. But I think if we can come to the end to say what's our percentage increase, then we can start to look at, okay, do we fit in there or not? Versus going the other way and say, we don't have a goal, let's just start looking at what we think we need and go that route. I would rather start, I think 3%'s low, I think.
Especially because we didn't do anything last year. Last year was 0.48. That's just the water thing.
I'd even be fine saying 7.5 to start with preliminary and then work our way down. Do I want to end at 7.5? No. But 18 seems, or 15 now.
So 7.5 would put us at, go to page 5, the 2026 number would be 2949 instead of 3154.
But where are you saying that?
Page 5,
The table, page 5.
apply 1.075 to the 2743, we'd get 2949. 098. So that would be
Is that 7 or 7.5%?
7.5.
Okay.
Did you say 7 or 7.5?
7.5.
So $200,000, $206,000 increase to the levy instead of the 400.
I think the problem that we have is that we've got 25 minutes to figure this out, and we're not gonna be able to go through, we went through the capital improvement plan projects one by one the last time. There was no disagreement on whether we needed any of those or not.
Right.
To make a blank statement that we're just gonna set a target and after we walk through all those pieces, which are the biggest pieces of this budget, really. And not, when we had that discussion, nobody disagreed with any.
I disagree with the levy increase. I think I was pretty clear that.
So we're talking about, if we drop it to 7.5, we're talking about $200,000
Increase
decrease in the levy
From where.
from where it's
from where
at.
it is right now.
Right, 50 of it can be from the contingency, zero that off.
That's fine, but then we're not talking about what we just got the information on. That she just delivered to us, all of this. You know, that's not, is or isn't in it.
That's in.
We have some of it, right?
Yeah.
Anything.
Jay, the
from-
ones in red are.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything from page 3 in the middle down is not in the budget.
And what are we planning to do with, when we're gonna have a meeting here in a week? And we're gonna be thinking about doing something. With the city hall, with offices, whether it's temporary, whether it's whatever, and we haven't even, that's not in this.
No, Jay, it's not, but if I remember right, the advisory committee was thinking about, they proposed that we use the COVID funds. To cover that expenditure, if we should we decide to remodel this. So that.
So there we go.
That would not have an impact on.
Using up reserves, and I think our accountant kind of warned us what happens when you start just treating yourself to your reserves.
But that specific item was for a future either land purchase, building purchase. And you could say remodeling, it was for general government purposes, so the auditors would not be upset for us using that. We even mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned that, I never say that. I don't think that's an issue, but so is that an issue?
It's not the auditors, it's your bonding agencies. When you
Okay,
go out for a bond, your bond rate. You'll end up with a lower bond rating, which gives you a higher interest rate that you're paying on.
Yeah,
That's
what,
where-
what's, cause we've got a AAA or.
You have a AAA plus, or a AA plus.
Okay.
So you're one step from a AAA, so you get about the best there is right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and where's that threshold?
well, it's not necessarily if they notice that you're using fund balance to balance your budget every year, they look at that, they start downgrading you. I know when I was in Lake Elmo, we had $21 million. And I said, well, we could use some of that instead of bonding, and I called the rating agencies, 2 of them. And they said, no, unfortunately, if you start using those to, pay for capital instead of your bond rating is going to go down. He said, that's just how they look at it.
and how much basis points increase in our interest rate would that be, do you think?
I have no idea.
See, I would wanna know that.
I don't
That'd
think
be
they can
good.
tell you that either.
Okay.
Because you go out for bids.
Okay, the 600,000 we received from the federal government, the bond rating agencies are not gonna say you can never use that again because you'd be lowering your fund balance. They gave us that money for general government.
No, they know that.
Okay, so they're not going to.
It's just the general fund we're
Downgrade.
talking about.
Yeah.
Well, no, like when I was in Arden Hills, we never bonded at all because we built our reserves up so that we paid for everything in cash. But so it wasn't, we took every year in our fund balance policy, we put 50% next year's expenditures in there, and anything over that, we put into that because it was one-time money. If you're using it for one-time money, what the rating agencies don't want to see you do is balance operating funds with fund balance, because that's, if it's a one-time thing, like you're doing a capital thing, if it's a one-time purchase, it's one-time dollars for, a one-time purchase. That's the different. Operating, it's year over year, every year. And if you start doing that, then you start getting behind. That's what they don't like to see, is if you're balancing your budget with one-time fund dollars, That's what they're looking at. They look at how you're balancing your operating budget.
So last year's the first time we used some fund balances, if I remember, in the, you know, at least the 2 years I've been. So is that the anomaly as last year?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what's causing your 14% this year, because had you not done that last year, that would probably be a more even.
It's because we have such a large reserve. We still have a large reserve.
So we're already down that path, Doug.
I know when I was at Arden Hills, when we did it too, we did it like 3 or 4 years in a row, and I said, no matter what you do, and like I was the same way, I told him, I said, at some point, you're gonna end up with a double-digit increase because we had used fund balance.
Which we did last year, and now here we are.
Yeah, even if you went at some point, you're gonna end up having to increase it because you only have so much in your reserves. If you're using it for capital projects or one-time things, then it doesn't become a problem. It's when you start using it to do your operating budget.
Which we're doing now, sounds like.
Well, it sounded to me like, I'd have to pull up my paperwork, but I thought we were covering one-time items. With the reserve last year, we were not covering operating items. I could be wrong, but
I'd have to go back and look what new stuff was last year, but if it was capital items, then it would be one. But if it was to offset, your operating budget, then it
well,
would.
if it was one-time operating items, some things are not capitalized, but they're one-time operating items. So for example, you buy some software for the office.
But that was put under your capital budget.
Okay, well, that's-
I mean, it was in the capital levy. And I think it was even when you didn't do that 75, you did things that you had put in there because you wanted to look at them, but they weren't done that year. It was put over in the fund balance in that capital fund, and it's reserved for that, which is why all of a sudden you had all these extra little funds that they were trying to do, which I said, we should really break apart if you want to do that. But that's where those assigned balances are coming from when you do the audit statement. There's committed, assigned, and you know, those type of designations because you've designated it for certain things.
Before we vote, Steve, before we vote next time, can we please, and Sue, can we please have our fund balances too? A nice table that says, here's where we started the year, here's the revenues, here's the expenditures, here's the transfers, if there are any in and out. Here's what we expect the fund balance to be at the end of 26. I'd like to see that before we vote.
Could we also look to see what we did last year for fund? One time.
I mean, what the transfers were.
Did we transfer it out of for operating expenses or
much?
capital?
Yeah, I'd
So
go back
I thought it was for capital, but I don't recall.
I kind of thought it was capital too.
I wonder, I seem to think that we didn't designate. No, I think we just use it to reduce the levy. I think
That's what we did.
yeah, I don't know that we designated it.
I can go back and look at the minutes when you adopted it. And I can look, and I could try to go back and look at what so I saw what was proposed and I saw what the end was, so, but I could go back and try to look in between for any notes.
Use of fund balance reserves for operations, final budget, it was 0. There was nothing in there. According to her. Memo. That's his memo. I think you have this, I said.
I do have that.
Yeah.
I think you cut a lot of things in here that probably were put back into here last year.
So we have nothing budgeted for. City Hall.
Page 3 of her memo, actually, if you want me to read this, I can. The following transfers are proposed in the 2025 budget to transfer these items out of the general fund reserve balance and into the capital project funds. And it had a list of like 7 things for $179,000. A strategic plan, an ordinance codification, some finance software, new software not purchased from the previous year, city hall parking lot, city hall AC projects, stormwater projects. And a parks master plan, and that all added up to 179,915. Well, those sounded like one-time items.
So we have a couple more months of actuals, and have we looked at our year to date through August?
No, I do, Ted.
Hmm?
No, I did, Ted. Are you on another work session before the next meeting?
I think we should just leave it at the proposed and then gives us time to
Figure it out.
figure it out. If you really want to go, why we can walk through all the capital projects again. Walk through any of those other items, but. We leave it where it's proposed, it gives us. The padding time to walk through all the line items again.
We give me time to put the long range plan together and make sure
Right.
I've gotten all the fund balances in the right spots.
Agree with that.
Do we have numbers of budget versus actual in 23 and 24? Because last meeting, one of the things that was said was, you know, we budget high and then we come in low, which is awesome. But if we do that, we continue to keep increasing. So is there a way for us to see budget numbers for those? Or was that,
I can put budget numbers and a budget to actual for any of those years that you want. But
Hey,
I only have,
Rick, we got a meeting going on, please.
I only have so much time to be,
Yeah.
I provided Steve that exactly what you asked, what you just asked for from the audited financial reports. Where there's a final budget column and there's the actual column for each of the funds. Well, I'm sorry, it was just a general fund. And I sent it to Steve. But it's my work, not Sue's. But it comes directly from the audit, and you're right, Abe, if I recall right, if you back out the unbudgeted, because we didn't know about getting COVID funds and stuff like that, on average, the last 5 years, we've under budgeted revenues by 177,000, which is good. We collected, well, it could be good or bad, depending on what side you're on. 170,000 77,000 on average per year for the last 5 years, more revenue. And we've under budgeted, we've over budgeted expense by like over $300,000 on average per year. That's for the general fund and the road and bridge fund. I combined them because we combined them at the end of 24. And if you want to go back in time, you got to combine them and got back in time. But I sent that to Steve. And if anyone's interested, I'll send it to other people if they want it, but.
I can go through and do that. I know some of that is done because you didn't do you didn't do the seal coating. And those are really big dollars in there.
Sure.
And then when you are contracting versus you have employees, the benefits and things aren't in there. So it's like some of that just has to do with the changeover and things that are going on too. And what you did is some of those transfers you did were things that you didn't spend, so you transferred them over. And so they're in those reserve funds, which is what I need to work on so that I can go through and pick all that up.
How much of the savings did we get actually or recognize out of having, the employee changes that we've gone through in the last 2 years, where we've had some serious changes or savings because we didn't spend the money because we didn't have an employee for different things. So, if we're looking at that, we can't really look at that past savings and say it's gonna happen next year.
But if I'd lay it up budget to actual, because it's
Right.
all line itemed, I think you can see
Okay,
what's going on then, because you would see your wages. If they were up and when we do the audit, we have to do that
Yeah.
line item by line item too.
and
But
you're right, we didn't have burden on contract employees where we're hiring temporary.
and your engineering fees, if you didn't do those seal coating and things, was probably less too. So some of that stuff I think is coming from some of the maintenance that you deferred for 2 years.
Right. Well, we've deferred maintenance for 2 years on certain
Yeah,
things.
and so
So we
it's
shouldn't
easy
be
for
in
me, Councilmember Zanto, if you want me to do budget to actual on 23 and 24, I could do that.
If it's relatively simple, yeah, I think it'd be great to see that. Just to get a picture of, do we have that scenario happening with, if we just look back of actual with 1 year, but then actuals for 3 years, but we're only looking at budgeted versus actual
Right.
for one. It's not telling potentially the full story.
Yeah, I can go on through and do it. I'm just saying that it's hard because I'm starting over and I'm doing everything from scratch.
Yeah.
Normally this stuff would have been done a long time ago, but yeah, I mean, if that's where you really want to see where it was, you can see where you were over or under budgeted, but then if we were looking at line items, we'd probably be able to say, well, that's because we didn't have an employee.
Yeah.
This is probably over because we had, a consultant in here. We didn't do the road construction or maintenance here, so that's why that one's under. There's some of those that you transferred over in those transfers that are now being held in the capital fund. And then what they showed you last year was 5 more mini funds in that capital fund, which really should be broke out. We can make funds for our own purposes, even if we combine them together for financial reporting. But it would be much easier to track that and to see what money you're saving for what.
Yeah, and maybe it wouldn't be useful because time is of the essence for the preliminary, but at least for those.
Well,
future
for
conversations.
October and November, my intent there is to get a long range plan out that has your fund balance, beginning fund balance, and it shows you a history, but shows you the future, so that you can get a better idea of what you're going to do, what you're planning to do, where you can see the big fluctuations so you can even them out. But then it will show you. Then once that's all created, it's just a matter of upkeeping it. So right now, is the consensus that I should add $10,000 for that stormwater utility study
Yeah, I think so.
in the
Yeah.
storm drainage?
I wonder if that's already in here. Increase by 10,000 for city council workshop.
Oh, then we already did it.
Sure. Okay.
And maybe just.
That was it.
Yep, that one, then it's done. Then that's already in there. So then don't add anything else right now. Do you want me to bring it back? I'm trying to look for council consensus. What to bring back for for your preliminary budget adoption.
I don't think you're gonna get a consensus. I think you're gonna get a majority.
Well, that's best I'm gonna get.
Right. It isn't a majority. We don't have to have a 5-0 vote on preliminary budgets doing like.
No, just, it's. Majority vote, yeah. I'm just looking for direction.
I gave you my direction earlier, but
Yeah, I think the majority was leave it as proposed, so we can get through the preliminary and we can revisit it after that.
15% increase.
And then we'll schedule probably 2 budget workshops, one in October and one in November.
And we can start with that.
Might need 3.
Okay. And I'll make sure that we have the long range plan and the fund balances so that, and then I'll work on this other part too. When I get this done, the budget to actual for 23 and 24, I'll update this and I'll send it out to you.
Please.
So that you can start looking at that and get an idea of where you're more over or under budgeting. And then I'll work on the long range plan and get the fund balances. Okay, that's the direction.
Fund balances can be at before the vote though, right?
For general fund, I probably can do that.
I don't like voting when I don't see the balance sheet part of the equation, so if it's at all possible, it doesn't have to be detailed, it's just, here's where we started 2026 with the fund and use 2025's end of year budget number. Add the revenues, subtract expenditures, change the transfers, ins and outs, here's where we think we're gonna be at the end of 26.
Right,
It's
but
like
you're looking for the general fund.
yeah, I wouldn't mind
Because
seeing the
that's the
capital
only-
fund either, we have capital fund, we have a couple funds. We have,
Right, but I mean, they're the only ones that affect the levy.
there's no capital improvement fund levy amount this year.
No, I 401,
Same with the debt.
401 I will do.
Yeah.
But the only thing I have in 401
Is
is the
88,000.
88,000, which you have to pay Scott County.
But it's nice to see that we still have a $1.8 million reserve then.
Right,
in
but
that.
but that one also has 5 or 6 different little mini funds inside it that I have to go back and see what was overspent or underspent in 2024. Because they are up to date as of the last budget round. And to see if anything was spent out of them or not.
Can I send you a question, because we're running out of time? I have a question about if you're starting to book things in the general fund that used to be in the capital fund, should any of that reserve in the capital fund be moved to the general fund?
Yeah, that's something I definitely would talk about when
Okay.
we're looking at it, because I think it
Yeah.
needs to be reviewed.
Yeah.
Because in your financial statements, that's partly what's happening, is that the auditors are giving a whole bunch of journal entries here, but never telling anybody to correct it. So when things are being booked in certain places, and when I was putting this together, I saw that and started putting things where they belonged. Because I knew that they were doing journal entries and putting it in the right spot in your audit report, but it wasn't that way in your budgets.
All right. Well, if I could get a motion to adjourn the workshop,
So moved.
I'll second.
motion is second, to adjourn the budget workshop, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, hearing none, motion passes. We'll reconvene in about a minute. We'll kick off the council meeting.